What's up, witches? So, this angle's not great, but I'm just gonna tell you what's going on right now. My friend Skylar and I are gonna go out scavenging because it's spring now. Winter has pretty much melted away now entirely. There's gonna be bones from hunters and things that died over the season. So, I'm gonna go look out for some cool bones. The problem is, it's been like thunderstorming for the last 24 hours on and off. And I'm gonna tell you the most ironic thing about my life. So I got a dog. His name is Thor. You've obviously seen him in previous videos. You'd think that a dog as large as he is, and with a name like Thor, that he would be the bravest dog ever. Not the case. This dog is terrified of thunderstorms, so he's not having a good time right now. So we're gonna see if we can get him to settle and be a little bit more comfortable to be able to go out bone hunting, because I don't think I should bring him with me to do that, but we'll see how that goes. So stay tuned. Yeah, those clouds 100% say rain is coming. Hip bones. Fabulous. What a femur. No bones. Jackpot. In a bucket of clean.
Down the trail here.
Dead things. What a joint. End of a femur. Gill plate of a fish. What a good place for a joint. We hit the jackpot today, boys. Just a full pelvis, it's fine. Literally just got home. It was pouring on our way back, but we had to keep the windows open because carcasses smell like death. Which wasn't too terrible, so I got them sitting on the side of the house, but it was just pouring. And so now I'm back with the boy, and he's very happy that I'm home because there's big, scary, loud thunder outside, and he's not doing great. So, I found lots of bones, pretty stoked about them, honestly. You've seen the carcasses, you've seen the nitty-gritty of all of this, but let's talk about rules and regulations just so you're doing this legally, because there's a lot of rules that the DNR have put out, and you need to follow them because you don't want the DNR to come and arrest you. Laws and restrictions. Obviously, you don't want to trespass. Only venture on public land or land that you have permission to be on. So if your grandma has a bunch of woods, you can go wandering around there all day, every day, but know where the property line is just so you're not ending up on someone else's property. Country parks and trails are a good place because they're public land and animals will just lay down and die. It's just kind of what they do. So, good places to start. Also, like four-wheeling trails, backcountry roads, anything that is kind of less inhabited by humans, less trafficked by humans, because usually those are the places that animals will congregate. And if there's lots of animals congregating in specific areas, that's usually where they go to die. So, things to keep in mind. Generally, you want to venture outside of city limits because city limits usually have particular rules around animals. That's why if you've got a possum running around town, people usually call either the DNR or the police in some cases. Just kind of keep in mind that you'll probably have more luck finding animals on places where there's less human traffic. Most land is owned by somebody, even if it's not posted signs everywhere. So if you go onto the DNR's website, there's actually places that you can get maps for. So these are called public access lands or hunting areas. These are particularly places where humans are allowed to go to. It's designated for hunting or scavenging. Probably your best bet to find a gold mine. Gold mine? Why can't I talk today? Along the side of the road is a really good place. Obviously, roadkill happens all the time. You're driving down the highway, you see things, you can pull over and just take those things, throw it into your car. This is where we'll talk about tools later, but this is where you want to have like plastic tubs just so that you're not getting carcass juice all over. Carcass juice, Jesus Christ, Taylor. Into your car, because you'll never get the smell out. I swear to the gods. Busier sides of roads, especially highways, you'll find lots of things, but obviously be careful. You've got cars whipping past you at 70 or 80 miles an hour. Be careful, be cautious, use your brain. Next would be hunter dump sites are phenomenal. Most of the places that you saw in the previous clips that we found giant, spinal columns or full rib cages, those are usually hunter dump sites. So when it's hunting season, especially for deer, I found this, hunters will go out. There's specific places that are public land. You field dress your deer, you get rid of all of your innards, and if you don't want to take the hide, you'll leave that behind. And then any meat, you take that with you. You usually load that into your truck, and then you leave all of the unwanted parts into the field to decompose naturally. This is where scavenging comes in. So you can go out, you can find these full parts of animals, you pick and choose which pieces you want to bring home and clean, and you can leave the rest. It's pretty great, honestly. Easy decor. Usually for hunter dump sites, if you don't know where to find them, I'm sure you could probably just ask a hunter, be like, where do you dump all of your animals? They probably have a place or know a guy who knows a place. They're usually at the end of dead ends, or their truck access route, or ATV trails are probably a good place. Off the beaten path. So you're gonna need a RAV4 or a Ford Ranger or something that'll get you there. If you want fish bones, public watering holes, otherwise just public fishing areas, boat landings, anywhere that there is permittable fishing, because you don't want to bring the whole fish home. As well, you just fillet off what parts you want, you leave the bones behind. Scavengers can come and pick up whatever bones they want. That's how we found the carp teeth yesterday, which was really cool. I haven't seen carp teeth before. Pretty dope, honestly. Or just ask around. If you live towards the edge of town or you live out in the country, ask your neighbors if you could just wander around their property looking for bones. I'm sure they wouldn't be offended if you just took carcasses from their property. They probably don't want them. Oh yeah, always be aware of your state's hunting seasons and dress accordingly. So if it's the middle of fall, don't go into the woods unless you're wearing... Alright. Species restrictions. These are really important because the DNR will get mad at you if you pick up certain animals and don't tell them about it. So a lot of birds are protected through the MBTA, which is the Migratory Bird Treaty Act. This means that if it's a game bird, like a goose or a duck, pheasants during certain seasons, you can hunt them, you can also scavenge for them if you find their remains somewhere, but most migratory birds are protected at the federal level. So if you find a bird, I know that they're really cool, but best not to pick it up unless you explicitly call the DNR and ask. Sometimes they'll give you permission, sometimes they'll give you tags, but usually you have to go through the whole rigmarole of it, and if you feel committed, do that. If not, that's fine. This only goes for bones. If you find feathers, if you find turkey feathers, you can just pick those up. That's not a big deal. This is talking specifically about remains, things that can be molted and shed, not a big deal. Talked about birds. In references to mammals or anything with fur, a lot of times you need actual fur trapping licenses. If you're just scavenging for these things, it's a little bit different, but if you're hunting for them, you do need tags. Each state is obviously different with their laws and regulations, but overall, if you're hunting live animals or if you're selling taxidermied parts, even if it's just bones, you do need tags and licenses for those animals. If you're just keeping them for a private collection, you don't need these things, but something to keep in mind if you're thinking about making this into a business. Stay within your regulations. You can get fined very heftily. I went to a school that was very heavily based on DNR regulations and training people for these things, so they don't play. Okay, so If you happen upon a domesticated animal, so you find a cat that got squished on the side of the road or a dog that got hit by a car, you can take those if you would like, but you cannot, this is a federal law, you cannot sell animal parts from domesticated animals, and that includes hides and furs. Okay, so let's get into tools, because tools are really important in this. You can go out and you can just find bones, bring them home, clean them, but while you're out there, there's some things that you might need. Starting with plastic totes, like I was mentioning earlier, having something that is designated for dead things is probably a good idea. So keep a tub in your car or keep it in your garage for when you go out. Also having a designated backpack. I don't think I showed it in the video previously, but Skylar has a specific backpack meant for dead things. It's the only thing it is used for because, like I said, you're not going to get the smell out of anything. So one specific thing that doesn't cross-contaminate with any of your other laundry or anything else. Very important. Plastic gloves. Disposable's probably the best. I know it's not quite very environmentally friendly, but if you have anything that's fabric like gardening gloves, the smell will probably seep into said gloves. So if you're gonna just use them for that and wash them by themselves, that'd be okay, but plastic gloves probably your best way to go, just because sometimes you pick it up and it's gross. As is the nature of scavenging. You don't know what level of decomposition it's gonna be in. Also, hand sanitizer. For the love of everything, please have hand sanitizer. When you're out in the field, you're probably going to touch something gross. It's just how it is, and you don't have access to soap and water like you do in your house in that moment, but you still want to clean your hands and keep yourself safe from getting sick, because dead things carry diseases. A little bit of hand sanitizer will go a long way. Hand sanitizer. A little hand sanitizer will go a long way. You can use it repeatedly. It's just nice to have on hand. This is important, and this is where people might get a little wigged out, but you'll probably want a sharp knife and a dull knife. So you want the sharp knife to slice like a head from the rest of the vertebrae, so you don't have to bring the whole carcass home, but you also want a blunt knife in case you just want to pry bones apart. So you've got one just as like a crowbar if you need it, good fulcrum, and then you have a sharp knife if you need a little bit more fine detail. You could also probably fillet things out in the field, but people will look at you weird on the side of the road if you're doing that, so probably best to do it in the comfort of your own home on your own land. Just saying. Something I didn't think about that Skylar brought up that was really cool is look for owl pellets. Like, they're not super common to find, but you will find them if you're just wandering out in the woods. So, owls eat and consume their prey whole, so they eat a lot of rodents. So when you get an owl pellet, if you go through it, a lot of times you'll find like little baby skulls from rats, which is really cool if you're into that. I actually found an entire like little baby rat skull on campus once, just like in the middle of a pile. So something to keep in mind that I didn't think about, and is definitely a cool like side thought. Talked about tools, let's talk about cleaning. Like I said, dead things will still carry diseases, and there are definitely germs and microbes that are living on these fleshed animals, because usually when you find bones, there's still stuff on them. You'll find the creepy crawlies that were living on one of the carcasses we were looking at earlier. They're going to try and take as much flesh off as possible, but you usually don't get to it by the time it's all gone, so you're gonna have to clean some of it off. Here are some ways to do that safely. If you find nature cleaned bones, it's usually the best. They usually got the least amount of flesh on them. If you find anything that is by the side of a body of water, you'll have it maturating, which is water rotting. That usually gets things off. People actually do that as a method. I use that because it's a very slow process, but it gets most of the flesh off very easily. You might have some dried flesh, you might have some moss growing on it that you'll have to clean off, but that's reasonably easy. And then you have a really nice bone to work with afterwards. You probably want to do a short bath of like 5% hydrogen peroxide, and then you just dilute that with like a 1 part peroxide, 1 part water bath. It also whitens your bones, so a lot of times when you find them in the field, they look very mummified-ish, that very tan beige color that bones will get. If you want to brighten them and make them white, peroxide is the way to go. Content warning, this might be a little bit gross, but Skylar makes a really good point that probably should be brought up here if you're looking to clean things. There's a lot of tendons in skulls, and a lot of times there will still be things living in the faces of things. So A really good idea is to get like a very large straw and blow into the nasal cavities and brain cavities to try and get any of the bugs and scavengers that are definitely still living in there. It also helps then to get anything out that might be lodged in there, so more moss is always something that you'll run into. So just be aware of that. Always blow, don't suck. Another idea for mummified bones that you'll find that still have some flesh on them, if you don't feel like doing the peroxide bath right away to get flesh off, if you want to get more of it off beforehand, is just to pull or scrape it off. This is where the gloves come in if you're a little bit squeamish and you don't want to touch it with your bare fingers. Gloves are great. When I was talking about maturation, it'll probably help you a lot. Just running them in a hot bath of water for a little bit will soften up the tissue and makes it a lot easier to pry off than when it's dry. Just a tip. Then you can leave it in there if you want to maturate it if you want to. Otherwise, if it comes off really easily, that's when you can use the peroxide bath again. And finally, the last squeamish part. We're almost done here, folks. So, soft flesh is usually the stuff that smells really bad. That's what you smell when you smell the scent of death. It can be removed several ways. A lot of people will just bury their bones, let the things that are living in the ground decompose all of the flesh off, and then you can re-dig it up, and then you have a very nice clean bone that you can just peroxide bath after that to whiten it. Otherwise, you can maturate it like we were talking about, and that's water rotting. So you put the entirety of the bone with flesh and all into a bucket, submerge it completely. If you have like an entire rib cage or spinal column, you'll probably need a really big bucket for this, so use the appropriate size container. You leave it closed with a little bit of space for any gases to escape. It'll be very slow, but it'll come off very cleanly. Dish soap is also really helpful when you're doing a bath. When you're getting all the tissue off, Dawn specifically acts as a degreaser. So if you have a lot of really fatty tissue that you're trying to get off, taking a really dull knife in a bath of Dawn dish soap and water will help you kind of scrape off all of the fat that you're wanting to get off. And then when you go to either macerate it or bury it or do whatever you want to, you can simmer it in a pot if you'd like to. I would recommend doing that outside, especially if it's been sitting there for a little bit. Have some kind of designated area outside. Alright guys, I know this is a little bit more gory than my other videos, but I hope you found it interesting and maybe entertaining a little bit. I find bones and death just to be an extra continuation of the life cycle, so it's not something as taboo as some people make it into. I hope that you can find some beauty in death like I can. I hope you guys had a good one. I'll see you on the next one. Skull, my friends.